what I want to dive into is what you said, the conversation part of it. The conversation part of it, you're saying is like help connect it. So
Yes.
my
So
conversation with you is helping.
yes. So Glenn, in order for us to sell somebody or help them buy your product and services, you have to have a connection, right? So when two people connect, that takes the conversation to a whole nother level. And the mission of the seller is to connect with the buyer.
The mission of the seller is to connect with the buyer. Okay, so this is where I would personally and have struggled with this a little bit. Connecting with the buyer, how do, it's hard to do that because you don't. Most of the time, you're starting out from a place of in the past. Supposedly, you're starting out from a place of not knowing the buyer. You're
Okay,
just hoping that they have an interest in your product.
that is a great point. So before you have that conversation with that buyer, in today's world, we have access to lots of information. I can find out all about you in about 10 minutes through the internet. One of my favorite tools that I teach my clients to go look up before the meeting is to go to LinkedIn, read their profile. In their profile that they wrote, okay, they
Yeah,
tell you everything about them,
yeah.
right? And so I like to start all my conversations with a new prospect with their volunteer experiences. And you find that in LinkedIn. And that tells you who this person is at his core.
That's one of those writable moments. I want to give everybody a chance to. We always say, you tweet this, but that's a writable moment. The volunteer, what they volunteer for. That's something
Yes.
I hadn't even thought about. I know as an icebreaker, a way to let that person know that I read your profile, I know about you. I haven't thought about that, but if they have volunteer stuff on there,
Yes, absolutely. That is the best way because that's telling you who they are. Their job is their job. That doesn't tell you who they are. But their volunteer experience, they could be a
hmm,
basketball coach, a baseball coach, they could be a golfer, they could be mentoring young adults, they could be mentoring women, they could be doing or they may be animal lovers, so they'll volunteer. So that's where you
research.
find out who that person really is and what they're passionate about. And the first couple of minutes of that conversation should be about them talking about their passion. That allows them to open up and get really comfortable with you.
That's interesting because when you go through LinkedIn, and it's there. If they wrote it there, it's there. So I hadn't really thought about that. Then I guess if it's not on LinkedIn, it might be on the.
Facebook profile, but most people that fill out the complete LinkedIn profile will fill out the volunteer and what their interests are. And that's something that they wrote. So you're
Yeah.
speaking to something that they wrote.
Let me ask you because depending on your market and who you're trying to sell to, if you're in the C-suite level and that's who you're trying to sell to, my experience, and correct me because one person's experience doesn't mean anything, and that's why I wanted you to be here. But in my experience, C-suite people, they just maybe they have someone else fill out their LinkedIn profile, and they don't. It's just nothing. They don't post to it. They don't do any ads, not ads, but articles. Does this vary based upon their title? Maybe how much
No,
information is there?
because if the purpose of LinkedIn, whether you're C suite or not, is to engage with your target audience. So the more transparent you are, because keep in mind, people are looking for transparency these days, right? So if they may not have written their profile, but they gave input to their profile. So they may have told whoever wrote it,
Yeah.
ask them questions. What do you volunteer? What do you volunteer? I used to help people write their LinkedIn profiles years ago, and I used to always ask, so what do you do for fun? What do you do for fun? How are people going to get to know you? Because we want to come across as being approachable. If it's all work, they're gonna say this guy or lady is pretty boring. But if you find out what they volunteer, that opens up for conversation.
It certainly does. It certainly does. I'm just thinking of several opportunities that I have probably missed with people. Number one is I don't have what I volunteer for in my profile, but that I could add that in so if someone's looking, they can research and find it. But that's a powerful little step when you're talking about keeping it simple. That's a simple, easy process that you can use. Just look for what to volunteer for. And then I'm wondering, what would be the second? I don't want to, yes, I do. What would be the second thing? So let's say they don't have or volunteer or they do have it. What would be the second thing you would look for in order to make that
So,
connection?
so I look for their work history.
Ah,
You look at their
right.
work history. So if they've been in sales or leadership for X amount of years, you look there because all we're trying to do, Glenn, is to
Mhm.
first couple of minutes is break bread, find common ground, right? So you can look at their
Good
work
way to put it.
history, right? You can look at where they lived. You can look at the school that they went to. In their school, people put what activities they were involved with.
Okay.
So there's all kind of personal things that we can look for. The problem is,
Mm,
Glenn, most people don't read people's profiles from the bottom to the top to the bottom, right? Because if you read their profile, there's something in there that you can speak to.
true, true. And let me now, I personally discovered, and I mean, like I told you when we were pre-talking to this, I tend to ask a question and then not get to the rest of the questions. And especially in this case, to be honest, ladies and gentlemen, I'm cheating a little bit. I'm picking on Thomas's knowledge because we want to upgrade ourselves. And we're looking at it from marketing. And I lost my question.